Hello, my name is Oren Livne, and this is my first chess streaming video. Um, I'm about USCF 2100, and I still have this dream, like many of us, to become a master one day. And I thought I would start streaming and have those videos unpolished. In other words, work in progress, kind of like give you an idea into my training techniques. And as a result, I also get to train while I'm doing those videos. So that actually works as just part of my routine, just sharing it with people. Now, one of the things that I think identifies every chess player is their personality and how they work against the principles and rules of chess. You're always driven by two sources of, gravitation, and sometimes they align, sometimes not. The first one is your personality, your inclination, what you would like to play, and the other one is the principles of chess. And so a lot of what I do has to do with my personal inclinations, and one of them is I happen to have a good memory, I think, and one of the techniques that has been helpful is memory games, and this is the topic of today. So memory game is basically you memorizing a model game in your opening of choice, maybe a line that you play and you have a problem, just like the example that I'm going to be looking at today. And this is a game I haven't memorized yet. And so we'll just go through the process of how you memorize a game, and I guess maybe preface by why do we even do this in the first place? Well, this is recommended by certain trainers, including my trainer, so shout out to FIDE master Karl Bohr. He was the one that told me about this, and then I read about it in several books. The idea is that if you're able to memorize an entire game, this is a guideline. This is kind of like a lighthouse that when you play this opening, even if they vary, at least you have an idea of what the general middle game plan is, what is the overall course of the game. So you're never totally lost. Now, the other thing is, in my opinion, it's kind of fun, and being able to show this to other people and your friends. And also, as you're doing this, and we'll see, part of memorization is repetition. Somebody said that you have to repeat something 30 times in order to memorize it in your long-term memory store. So that means that even if we memorize it today, we'll maybe have to repeat this again every day for the next month in order to cement this in our memory for long term. But one of the things that's very helpful is part of the process is you build the logic of the game, little mini sequences, you do an analysis, and then you revisit the game and you do more analysis on it. And so it's not just about the game, but really understanding what's happening behind the game. And this is really what we want. We want to avoid rot memorization. We want to do it in a way that is going to serve us in the future, which means that we're going to memorize some patterns that are going to guide us more generally, even beyond this particular game. So, I got a lot to say about different things. I'm still kind of like new into the streaming scene and learning the tools. I'm using OBS. And so let me just dive right into it and, try to see how this is going to work out. And, basically you're like training with me when I'm doing this at home. So I've been inspired by a video by Boris Avruch, who talked about how you oppose the Alpine Sicilian. I play the Sicilian defense, and so I opened this chess base here, and I already selected a model game. We can discuss in some other video how you select a good model game. This is between Awonder and Krishnan, 2500 versus a 2600. And ideally, of course, we want to win, but in this case, this game is a draw. It seemed to be a reasonable game where both sides played more or less the best moves throughout. There were no major blunders that I could tell, at least just looking at it. I haven't analyzed it or anything. So what if they play the Alpine? And so being a hyper-accelerated dragon player, we want to somehow get the g6 in, but it's going to be a little hard here. So let's see what happened. We're basically going to go through the game several times, and the first is just to play through the moves, and then eventually we're going to repeat this several more times and kind of like divide the game into mini sequences that tie together, chunks, and that really helps with memorizing it as a whole. So we can't get our g6 quite yet, but Avruch basically advocates the line of you play d5, which is thematic. They played a pawn move, you want to strike in the center. And so queen takes d5, and what's going to happen typically is that black is going to take on d4, white's going to have an isolated pawn, white will have greater piece activity because of that pawn in the center, but you know, black wants to counterattack as well with his pieces. So typically you would see knight f6, knight c6, c takes d4, but the line we're examining is g6, which I think is, like Avruch says, a fighting line. So knight f3, bishop g7, this is all standard. I'm not going into the theory of the entire line, but knight a3 is definitely one of the most testing tries here. The idea is to come to b5 and c7 and give a family fork, as they say. Queen, king, and rook. So the other idea is that white wants to play bishop to c4 with tempo on f7. And so these are the two ideas. And now there's an important idea that's going to come up. So first of all, we take c takes d4. He plays bishop c4, queen e4 check. This is part of Avruch's line, still in the opening. And now a very interesting move, bishop e3. This at first looks crazy, but if you think about this just a little more, you see that black cannot take the bishop because of bishop takes f7. The idea is if you take the bishop, then he's going to fork you on f7 by getting your king here and then getting your knight over here. So let's just, for the sake of it, just put this on the board. This is a terrible mistake because of bishop f7 enticement, and then there's the fork, and black loses. So white can afford to do this, and this is the key position where black is going to play knight to h6, and this is one of the main ideas of this line. Instead of developing the line, the knight to f6, we're coming to h6 and then f5, and then we're going to attack the d4 square, the e3 square. Our knight is going to be more forward on f5 than it is on f6. It takes an extra tempo, and on the other hand, it's a very fighting way to go. So I'm certainly for that. White takes. Could of course take with the knight as well, but we're just following the game for now. Kind of like wetting our feet in the water, so to speak. So black castles, knight b5, now threatening knight c7. Now the interesting bit here is that knight c6 is fine, but knight f5 is the strongest move. This is still within my opening book. He cannot really afford to play knight c7 because we're going to take the knight on on e3, I believe. Is that actually true? Or he can actually come back and, you know, we're going to have oh, actually this is not the point is, right, there was a different point to it. We'll have to go back and look at it. That knight c7, you can actually play knight c6, and he can't really afford to take on a8 because we're going to take the bishop, and then we're going to have more development. So let's go back and we'll look at this a bit later. Of course, it's very tempting to turn on the engine, but I've recently been trying to do analysis on my own, and so we're going to use our heads instead. So anyway, knight b5, knight f5, and white develops a piece, queen to b3, hits f7. And now it's becoming interesting. So far it's kind of like in the opening book up to knight a5, I believe, and now we're out in the deep waters. So white is going to try to attack f7 with knight g5, and he has this knight c7 idea, so we make sure that the rook is not trapped. Oh, by the way, after knight c7, so we'll get back to this. So queen to g4, very interesting. One of the things is that in this line, our queen is kind of like invading into his position and annoying him, which I would call the stockfish defensive strategy from Matthew Sadler's book, The Silicon Road to Chess. And so on one hand, we're annoying him. On the other hand, our queen is moving a lot. So we have to weigh the two together. We're hitting the g2 pawn, so white castles. And so knight c6 is now a tempo. Now he's not going to trap our a8 rook. Bishop e2. Knight e3. We got the bishop pair. And he's got the f file in return. We got the bishop pair, and yes, 3 pawn islands. We have 2 pawn islands. The position is being transformed. He's got the discovered attack knight e5, so queen d7. Okay. King h1, e6, I'm guessing to avoid problems of f7, rook a d1, stepping away from the opposition with the rook. They're both repositioning, and now that's an interesting idea. So now we see why queen e7, he wants to trade queens, get to an ending where white will attack him less, and black has the 2 bishops, so white declines. And both sides finally finish development, so connecting the rooks is the final step. This is how you know you finish development. a3, so now white is trying to gain space, I guess. Queen b6, there's the weakness on e3 here. Knight a4, so he's going for the c5 square, and there you go. So white is saying, I really don't care about the bishop pair. This is a bad bishop compared with this knight, so I'm just going to give it if white wants to trade. Now, an important point in my mind at this point would be whether black plays b6. And so from now on, I'm going to turn on, let's see, we're going to turn on replay training. And so, okay, I guess in this case we already saw the solution, but a big question is whether b6 would be the right idea, and it turns out it's not good because you're going to get hit by knight d7 followed by bishop b5. So, knight d7. Now he wants to play b6, I guess. Okay. Now let's try to see what makes sense here. He's hitting the b7 pawn, and he's threatening knight e6 discovered attack, so bishop c6. Okay. And it's always good to try to play guess the move. This is a good, it's an easy feature in this case in ChessBase. Of course, there's guess the move on Chess Tempo and other software. I'm still searching for the best one. Okay, now he has the knights lined up on e5. We have a weakness on e3. So let's try, okay, let's see. We can either play queen d6 and get rid of the pin. Maybe that's a good idea. Your move is okay, but he decided to unpin in a different way. Okay. Okay, double pawn, but he traded queens. So I'm guessing he wants to preserve the bishop or not. You know, which one is it? Let's say we try. I believe I've seen part of this game before, so we're hitting e3. That makes sense. Okay. Bishop a7, a6. Okay, now we see that black's hitting a pawn while white is hitting a pawn. So still equal. Equal pawns. It's got this really bad pawn on d4 though. So I would say at this point that even though we have opposite color bishops, this endgame has to favor black. On the other hand, white has a 2-1 majority on the queen side, so outside passers a long-term business, so it's all about, I think, winning this d4 pawn. Now we have a knight attacked, so let's just attack a target, and let's attack it again. Okay, he gets rid of its problem, but b2 is a problem. Okay, your move is okay, but he decided to take. That's interesting. It's an interesting choice. I'll have to go back and revisit this. Okay. This is all transpositions. I believe that it's in black's interest to try to trade a little bit here. His king is less safe. We're pawn up. Why not trade? Okay. Let's make him trade for us. Another good advice. Let him trade for you. Don't initiate the trade. Keep the tension. Build the pressure. Okay. Bishop a5 is solid. What is he threatening? He's threatening the bishop. Maybe knight g5 later. We have bishop b2 attack. And then there's a skewer on the file. So I will try this. Okay, black plays, he wants to play bishop c5. Alright. Interesting why white didn't play rook to d1. Bishop c5. Okay, now let's guess again. Knight e4 seems reasonable. Putting a piece forward. Also knight f5, actually. Black is slightly better according to the evaluation here. I like knight f5. Okay. I can't say why. Apparently it's not the best move. I guess knight e4 stops knight g5. Oh, but now he's saying this move is not good. So let's try knight f2 check. Always good to check. I'm surprised that I guess you can't keep the pawn. Okay. Now the problem is invasion, but knight g5, you know, is common maybe. This feels like it turned a little bit in white's favor now. Oh, it says black has an edge though, so that's interesting. Maybe knight to g4, ideas of knight e3. Okay, he's threatening the knight. His knight is loose too. And h2 is a target. So I wonder if we should play something like h5 and rook d2 if we can. Or maybe rook f2. That weakens our pawn structure. Let's try it. Okay, they're repeating moves. I see, and that's probably why where the game ended. Yep, that's where the game ended. Okay, so I know this was just rudimentary. It's also a little harder to memorize and talk at the same time. But let's just go through the game again. You know, repetition is the #1 key to memorization. Okay, so we got the Alapin, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, and at some point, in fact, I'm going to, I will keep the moves one more time and then I will just hide the notation and start just looking at the board. Now, if you're doing a memory game in general, it is best to do it on an actual physical board. This helps your muscle memory a lot more when you're looking at 3D and moving with your hand. Because we're streaming, I'm just doing it online. Otherwise, it would be just a logistic nightmare. So knight a3, the key move, and now we're gonna play takes. Bishop c4, we give him a check. Bishop e3, little trap. Now let's get rid of these arrows. We don't need those arrows anymore. Knight h6. By the way, I should mention knight h6 now threatens to take the bishop because f7 is protected. So he takes the castle, and now I'm starting to do this from memory as well. It's queen b, knight b5. Okay, knight b5 first, knight f5, and now queen b3. Okay, we know that the next move is going to be to annoy him a little bit. Also move away from maybe tempi with bishop d5, bishop d3, so I want to play queen g4, castles, knight c6, no more rook trap. And now, I guess we start to reposition pieces. So bishop e2, yes. So we take, and then we move the queen away. You see how this is a little logical sequence here. This was a direct threat that black had to respond to. Now white has some freedom. Does he move his rooks? He's setting up a threat, discovered attack. We take the bishop while we can, and we move back from the threat. Okay, now beginning of the next sequence is king h1, e6. And now, so e6, I guess, is directed against his d5, cramping us, and attacks on f7. I'm surprised. This is probably, there's a reason why he didn't play d5 immediately. Maybe it was knight e5. Okay. Rook at d1, queen e7, avoiding it, and setting up the queen trade, right? We know this triangulation by the queen is something we want to remember moving forward. Okay. Queen b4, white declines. Bishop d7, finishing development. a3, queen to b6, right? Most active. Knight a4, c5 is coming next. And now rook a c8 and rook c1, and we know we can't play b6. Therefore, we're going to try to play in the style, I would say, of either the Sozin dragon or the Milner-Barry gambit, where these things happen, where you put the knight on e7 and the bishop on c6 to reinforce the d5 square in this diagonal. So this comes up even in the Marazzi bind sometimes, but mostly I would say I've seen it in Milner-Barry gambit and the Sozin attack, which is what I call, in the accelerated dragon with the bishop c4, queen a5. Anyway, bishop c6, that's the point. Knight d3, pinning us. Now we have to do something about that. So we play, what do we play? What was the next sequence? We know that knight f5 was coming at some point, but we can't leave that pin hanging. So queen b6 trades, and now he's going to go for that pawn. Let's see, how did that work? How did that work? We're already trying to start to build that logic up in our heads, and I'm trying to not look at the moves. Okay, knight e5, knight d5, I guess. Okay, so knight f5, now we're going to have the dance of winning the pawns from either side. Takes, bishop a6, rook a8 here, double attack. Rook b8, obviously better than rook a7, keeping the rooks connected. Bishop takes, knight takes, and now we transform the position into an isolated pawn with black is being better. It's very possible after we do our analysis, and then we're going to go through this again, and we're going to do an engine analysis, that black actually was maybe nearly winning. And so this is a good model game for the black player. Sorry about that. Let me silence the phone. Rook fei, one tempo. Okay, so this is kind of like the next cadence, like a musical cadence. This is like how I like to think about memorizing games. You chunk it together, things that make sense together. Rook fe1. And now we have to move somewhere. So back to f5 here, rook fd1. It gets rid of this isolated pawn, and now comes the interesting decision whether to keep a better pawn structure or not. I gotta say, this is a critical decision I really don't understand, so we'll have to look at why this wasn't played. But certainly bishop b2 takes, You see, raids or sequences of captures are logical points, and a4 because it was attacked. So another cadence. Bishop c3 keeps attacking him. This is the attack and defense. Still attack and defense. Bishop e4. So kind of like the end of this mini sequence. Bishop b5. Knight to d6. Heading for e4 maybe. Bishop e2. Oh, also hitting the bishop. Maybe he wants to basically just play bishop versus knight. Yeah, that'd be good. Bishop e2. Bishop c5 preventing the invasion. To c7. Okay, he luft. Knight e4. Bishop c4. King g7. So we're giving in the pawn. And knight e4 also prevented knight g5. So rook e4, knight f2, check, knight g4, check, knight e1, and check. So this is like the last cadence. Okay, now let's go over, and I'm going to hide the notation on my end. So I'm only looking at the board, but I'm leaving the notation open as a window for the viewers. And now let's try to do this from memory. So this is our third pass. c5, I'm going to say the move before I click it. So c3, d5, takes, queen takes, d4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, and now important move, knight a3. Notice how he plays knight to the rim and then back to the center or b5, and knight h6 back to f5 or g4, and symmetric. If anybody was around in the 90s on the chess servers and they remember, I think it was called Wild 5. It was a variant of chess where the two armies are set on the opposite sides. In other words, white is on the 7th and 8th rank, and then black is on the 1st and 2nd rank, and you start by moving your knights to the rim so that you can queen. A little bit reminiscent of that. So knight a3. And we can get rid of the arrows because we already know the game plan for white. Bishop c4 and knight b5. Okay, well, at any rate, we have to take. Pretty much have to take. Otherwise, he's going to take bishop c4, and this is a forcing move that creates problems for him. Bishop c4, queen e4, bishop e3, trap, knight h6, avoids the trap. Now he's going to take back, and now we're going to castle. So black develops rapidly, and he puts his pieces on a very aggressive posts here. He's going to put them in f5. Notice that white has also developed. I mean, also as minors, this is, Alpen is a good opening. Knight b5, I did not say this move, but yeah, that's important. I did not even remember it. So knight b5, knight f4, f5, we ignore him. Queen b3, queen g4, castles, knight c6, and that's the end of this cadence, at least in my head. Now, bishop e2, takes, with a pawn, yes. Queen d7 to avoid it, right. Now, next cadence. Next cadence is he's going to reposition his knight to c3, if I remember correctly, and he plays king h1 first, of course, and we played e6, that's what we said. Now rook a d1, I guess reinforcing d5, so this struggle around d5 still. Now, I guess I forgot, so the next one is the moving away, so we want to move away from opposition. I guess he moves away from opposition here, somehow, I'm not sure why. And so we move away from opposition. Knight c3, queen b4, queen trade, queen c2. And now bishop d7 completes development. I believe this was move 18. So 47 moves total. Okay, they can start working on the next thing, which is space. a3, queen b6, knight a4, queen c7, knight c5. We know that much. Rook c1, rook c8, rook c1. Now we remember the how will we call it? The defensive, the Sosen defensive maneuver. Knight e7. Queen b3, hitting the pawn. Bishop c6. And now we're going to go for that weakness on f5. Knight d3, I forgot that it's white's move, and now knight f5. Oh, queen b6, of course. First trade, and now we're gonna do the dance of the 2 pawns. So knight f5 takes, pawn takes, bishop a6, rook a8, bishop e7, rook b8, bishop takes, knight takes, isolated pawn. Rook fe1, he was attacked. Right, and now black gets, well, he has to respond. So knight f5. Rook cd1, rook fd8, d5. Major decision, bishop e2. Pawn takes, pawn takes. We know that a4, bishop c3. Takes, takes. Rook c1. Bishop e4. Okay, now white gets to do something. He moves, he wants to invade, so bishop e5. Prevent the invasion, knight d6. Bishop back to e2. Preserve the bishop. Knight to e4. Oh, bishop c5, sorry. Prevent the invasion, of course. g3. Gotta be careful. I tend to be hasty. That's one of my bad qualities. Knight e4. King g2. Oh, sorry, bishop c4. Bishop c4, king g. Did we decide we're giving it away? King g7, yes. Rook e1, knight f2, and now it's going to be the perpetual. So king g2, knight g4, king h3, knight f2, king back, knight d1, king back, knight f2, king back. Okay, so here we are. Now on the next pass, I'm not going to use the arrows. I'm going to actually move the pieces myself, and hopefully we will stay on track. Every time I make a mistake, it will probably be exposed because ChessBase will tell me I'm veering off and give me a little checkbox. So let's try to avoid this. So c5. So by the way, just for fun, we should probably look up the players later. Liang Awonder versus Krishnan, Sasikiran Krishnan. So Awonder versus Krishnan. I have to look them up later. This was played in Stockholm, Sweden, 2016, almost 2017, so fairly recent. Milton Cup, or is it Rilton Cup? Okay, c3. d5, takes, takes. d4, g6, our main move. Hang on, bishop to g7, yes. Knight a3. We take. We have to take. He's gonna tempo us, tempo him, trap, avoid trap, takes, castles, queen to b3, and of course there are plenty of other choices for white, but queen g4, very interesting, castles. Also moving away the queen from the e file makes sense. The rook's gonna come onto it later. Yes, so right. Castles. Am I already off? I am off. They didn't ask me for anything. I had a feeling I was off. Okay, go back here. So knight b5 is played first with the trap of the rook threat. We ignore him with knight f5. So knight b5 is a mistake we have to keep in mind. This happened several times. Now queen b3, queen g4, castles, and now we get away from that threat. Now what happened then? Next, he was trying to set up a threat on us. Take queen d7. And now what? It's white's move. Yes, he's starting to avoid a position. We do this, and now we do the queen triangulation business. Right. How did that work out? I believe he came back to c3. Queen b4, queen c2. Finish development. Okay, get an outpost. Improve the piece. This is why, by the way, the knight went from b5. So white fixed his knight to go to the left in 3 moves. Okay, rook c1. Now, yes, the defensive maneuver, the Sosa maneuver. So what's going to happen is once we know this game, memorize it without understanding it, then we'll be able to actually do analysis on the board ourselves without looking at the notation. So we're free to actually roam around and understand it better. Bishop c6. Right. And now he's gonna go to e5. I believe we go here. But before, if you remember, we discussed that we need to trade queens to go to an endgame. Right, now the dance, or the raid, as it's called. White's getting something. Black's getting something in return. And now he's attacked. So another raid, attack, and defense. Okay, this is attacked. Here, d5, getting rid of the weakness, major decision, continues the raid, takes. We'll have to find out why not bishop, like e takes d5, but okay, sure. And then a4. Let him trade for you. Right. Attack. Defense. Okay. Attack to invade. Attack the bishop. Bishop moves. We position the knight nicely. Nope. We know that's not right. We know it's bishop c5. We made that mistake before. Surprise white chess base. Yeah, we're on track so far. I believe g3 was played. Knight e4, king g2. Was that the case, or did he actually play? Yeah, when this is the, yes, you see, once we move, this is a mistake on my part. Let me just get rid of this here. Right. We know that once knight e4 is played, c4 becomes available, so he immediately attacks us. Okay, now I guess rook e1 here, and we got the perpetual going on. Right. And then I think this was it, right? That's move 47 right here. Yeah. So I would say, you know, well, 1 or 2 mistakes, we were able to recreate this game. We don't know anything about it yet. But I'm going to, so I think this is going to take more than 1 session. You know, there's another layer that you build on top of this next, which would be the analysis. But just going through the mechanics and following through with the cadences shows you an example of how I think I memorized the game in 40 minutes, including talking. And so, let's see. Can we actually, yeah, let's, now we have a blank chess base over here. And let's just conclude by doing this from scratch on our own. And when you do this on your own, I want you to just follow those steps. For now, just mechanically, this is step number 1, mechanically learning the moves of the game by cadences. So little mini sequences that tie together. And this is what we're doing right now. And as you can see, it really helped to understand how things tie together. Chunking is a good memory technique. It helps us remember core scale representations that are easier to grasp at once. When you look at the scene, you don't look at the pixels. You grasp the scene first of all and what's in there. So we do the same thing with our memory. And chess is also about visual memory in particular. So anyway, we said takes, here, trap, knight h6, avoiding the trap. Notice how I'm labeling the moves with words. This really helps. Tagging them. Develops. Rook trap. Ignoring it. I'll have to learn why. Annoy him. Okay, he castles. Yep, no more rook trap. Repositioning with threats. We got the 2 bishops. This is kind of like almost like a French structure for white now, when he's playing with the e3, d4 and the open f5. Okay. What happened next? What happened next? The oppositions, or avoiding the oppositions. King h1, e6, rook a d1, here. Now he's going to bring his knight to c5 in 3 moves. That's cool. I think John Watson showed it to me once in a lesson. Just, move the knight 3 moves to get to an adjacent square. Sometimes you want to do this little editing of the position. Finishing development, move 18. It's kind of like a nice little marker. Okay, he's gonna fight for the outpost. Also, we have the 2 bishops, so he wants to make the knight superior by putting him on a good square. Advanced support point, as Silman would say. The only open file in the position is the C file, so both sides are fighting for it. Defensive maneuver. I mean, eventually we want to get rid of this knight, and a good way to put it is, I guess, bishop c6 and b6. So white fights for this, and now he's going to come to a different place. Okay. All right. Let's simplify. Now, the raid, the dance of the 2 pawns. Notice how I'm naming this into like a story. Okay, both pieces move around. Okay, now we got the isolated pawn transformation. The raid's still going on. And so, okay, yep, still going on up to here. And now major decision what to do about this pawn. I guess that's really forced. This is the decision for black to make. Why not take? Well, he takes the other pawn. Takes. Bishop here. Notice we're moved 34 with ease. We created, sorry, a4 is what I meant. Created it with ease because we now understand the logical sequences, even though we didn't even do any analysis yet. We're just understanding the mechanics of the game. So this was a very long raid. And now it's continuing really because white wants to invade, and it's continuing because he wants to attack the bishop and get bishop versus knight endgame. And it's really only now, well, just now, that there's a respite, I guess, in the game, that somebody gets to play something that's not forced. So this raid started a move more or less 25, and it's moved 39 now, so 14 move sequence. Okay, now black really wants to recentralize the knight, get into f2, gives up c4. Let me quote Fisher by saying, in order to get squares, you gotta give squares. Okay, we're going to set up the perpetual now. And look at the ease at which I was able to recreate this game from memory. 47 moves, I'm pretty sure it's correct, just after 45 minutes of studying, maybe even less. So you can do this, but now that it's in our memory, we want to reinforce it. And so the next thing that maybe I'm going to do in the next video is replay through the game and analyze it through. Understand what could have happened, why they played what they played. Maybe they made mistakes, try to point them out, and that's going to be next time. So for now, I hope you enjoyed it. As homework, what I'd like you to do, if you want to follow this as a class, is find a model game, maybe a game you always wanted to memorize. It could be a classic like Morphy versus the Duke, right? The Opera House, or something in your opening. I tend to look at things in my opening lines so that it serves me well later, not just for classic education, but just because it helps me navigate. So find a game like this. You can use a chess base or any kind of software, a database where you take strong players like Carlsen or Kasparov, or sometimes you want to use a model player and you look at their games rather than an opening. Whatever works for you. Take a game. This game is fairly long. It has 47 moves. Maybe try to start in order to build your muscle with something that's up to 30 moves. I would say 30 moves is probably a good start. You know, I think after move 20, you can't do this just by relying on your memory. You have to actually rely on chunking and understanding. That's what I found. So maybe I've already built this muscle memory a little bit. I think I have like 50 games that I've memorized before. Obviously, I forgot a lot of them. Some of them really stick well. Actually, 2 of Carlsen's games. But I want you to do it with up to 30 moves before diving into something that has 50 or 60 or 70 moves. So, especially in the end games, when it becomes fewer pieces and it's more strategic and things are more longer terms, it becomes a little bit more cryptic and harder to understand. So you want to stick basically to middle games, and so do this on your own, go through the steps, and then we'll see you next time with the analysis section. Maybe by then I'll know a little bit more. If anybody can recommend how to present good bullet points other than opening another PowerPoint window as a source in OBS, let me know so that I can display takeaways. So I'm going to continue with takeaways next time. And so before I conclude, I'm going to just give a recap of what we've learned so far, and yeah, I'll see you next time.